man can't stand, you can't fight. A man can't breathe, you can't fight. A man can't see, you can't fight.
Extreme situations require extreme measures.
Man, what a time to be a Terry Silver fan. It's what a time in the world here.
Yes, and now the real podcast begins.
If you're wondering who that voice is, I hate to inform you, but Terry Silver systematically ruined Badway's life, and he quit the podcast. So I had to get a special guest here, host for this special episode on Cobra Kai here. Welcome, Chris, to the podcast. Welcome, Chris.
I love when a plan comes together. Thanks, Terry. Seriously, thank you. Thank you, Drew. Thank you for having me on.
Anytime, man. Hey, this is a special episode. I'm going to call it episode 81.1, I guess. Maybe. We'll see if I actually stick that when I edit it. But, I thought it would be fun since, Badway did have a different commitment and we wanted to stick to our release schedule here. We're going to give you a bonus. We wanted to do a show on Cobra Kai, and I'll intro you to Chris in a second, but we thought this would be a good opportunity to do this. But before I get into that, if you're looking for the website is thelastrowpodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter at thelastrowpod, facebook.com/thelastrowpod. Head out to Spotify, hit the subscribe button, Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review. Thanks to everybody that left one so far. Also on Podchaser, we can leave some reviews now too. Thanks, Chris. You actually left us a review.
Yeah,
so thank you for that.
Thank you for leaving my podcast a review. See, that's how this works.
Absolutely.
Just leave each other reviews.
Yeah, but I just wanted to intro you, Chris, because if there's anyone that's going to do a podcast on Cobra Kai here with me, and Terry Silver, the only other Terry Silver enthusiast that I know, I got to intro you here. So tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, and just thanks again for jumping on the show and doing this with me.
No, thank you again for having me on. This is a big thrill. The Lastro is one of my favorite podcasts of all time, and I'm completely serious when I say that. So thank you. This is really great. This is an honor, honestly. And yes, Badway will be back next week. Yeah. I am not here permanently, so don't unsubscribe. Yeah, please.
He might have to get Terry Silver after you then.
Yeah. Well, he'll send Snake and Dennis. They'll be on the on the case.
Exactly.
But no, thank you again, seriously, for having me on. I love talking about Cobra Kai, so anytime I get the chance, I will absolutely jump on it.
Thank you. And if you guys don't know, Chris has a podcast too. Chris, plug your podcast, because I know we mentioned it before, but just I want to give you a chance to tell people in case they're interested in your show too.
Sure. So I do a podcast with my wife called Pro Wrestling Repackaged, and it is about wrestling-related TV shows. Our first season, we covered the new NBC sitcom Young Rock, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And our next season is going to be dedicated to the upcoming Stephen Amell show Heels on Stars. So if you like wrestling at all or just a little bit, you'll probably find something to enjoy in the show. It's not that wrestling centric to where you wouldn't be able to enjoy it, but if you do like any of the shows that we will cover, you'll probably find some sort of enjoyment in it. Right now, we're actually doing some bonus episodes where we're talking about wrestlers appearing on sitcoms, and we just did an episode talking about Vader and Mankind's appearances on Boy Meets World, which was quite a bit of fun. So if you're interested in that, you can check that out at pwrepackaged.com. That's where you can find the links to subscribe and everything, and to all the social media and stuff like that.
I'll put a link in the show notes for everybody, and I can personally attest. Everyone that listens to the show knows I'm a unabashed Boy Meets World fan. So go check out Chris's show. They did it justice for the Vader. The Vader appearance specifically was great. But thanks, Chris, again for that. And like I said, I'll put the items in the show notes so everybody can check out your show if they're interested in checking it out. So since Badway's not here and he's maybe somewhere where Terry just ruined his life, I'm going to turn it to you. Like, we're talking about Cobra Kai. I pulled a plot synopsis. Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about, do the honors and take it over here for a second.
Don't mind if I do. So this episode's about Cobra Kai. It debuted in 2018. It's created by Josh Heald, John Hurwitz, and Hayden Schlossberg. IMDb score 8.6 out of 10.
Too low.
But yes, too low. Rotten Tomatoes score 93%.
Too
in
low.
My opinion, still too low. TV.com 8.6 out of 10.
Too low.
way too low. And anything lower than a 10 for me is just a little too low.
Exactly.
34 years after the events of the 1984 All-Valley Karate Tournament, a down-and-out Johnny Lawrence seeks redemption by reopening the infamous Cobra Kai dojo, reigniting his rivalry with a now successful Daniel LaRusso.
It's not a bad synopsis there. We've had worse. I think that's pretty factually accurate. I mean, it's pretty factually accurate. It's hard to find a synopsis that encompasses 3 seasons of a TV show, but I think that one does it pretty much justice.
That's the nuts and bolts of it. That's what you need just for the jumping on point, I think.
Yeah, short and sweet. I pulled some taglines from IMDb. You know, we talk about that on the show. I know this is a weird special episode, but let's go through these because there's one in particular that I love that I think you're going to like too. But the first one is kind of weak. This was the season 1 tagline, but it said the Karate Kid saga continues. I think that's It's not clever enough in my opinion.
More just descriptive than anything. Yeah. It just lets you know what it is, but it's not really, doesn't have the zing to it.
Yeah, they needed to get to season 3 because apparently there was none on IMDb for season 2. But the next one is pretty great. And this comes in whenever you can incorporate like a number or some type of wordplay into the text. I like this. It says Cobra Kai never dies, but Kai with 3 eyes. So I'm a fan of that personally. Season 3.
Same. I love the Kai.
Yeah.
Never die. I love that. Yeah.
I guess it could be like Cobra Kai, like you're yelling it too.
It is often yelled throughout the series, so it is very fitting. You know, for season 2, I don't know if this was ever on any posters or anything like that, but for me, the unofficial tagline was always "Cruel Summer."
Yeah, there you go.
Especially with that great cover by Kari Kimmel. So I think that's kind of fitting for season 2 since there wasn't one.
Yeah. I think that's a good one. And then the third one that I had was just Never Dies, which is, again, short and to the point. We talk about financials when we do movies here. I know we're talking about a show. I don't know that YouTube Red or YouTube Premium or Netflix at this point is going to reveal their budget. So basically it's a who knows. And the cumulative worldwide gross, obviously that's a who knows too, because YouTube didn't like it enough to keep it going, and they switched it to Netflix. I would love to know what the financials are for this show and how many people signed up to Netflix to actually like view this show, because I can't imagine there was a lot of people on YouTube Premium. I had it, YouTube Premium, because I've got their music subscription, because I'm just a Google fanboy here, but just in general, like I don't know how much money they spend on this. It seems like they're not skimping on budget though.
Honestly, from everything that I've seen and heard the creators talk about, they don't have the biggest budget, especially since they shot all 3 seasons that we've seen up to this point on the YouTube budget. Yeah. And from what they've said, Netflix hasn't been that much bigger, surprisingly. So they do a lot with a little, it seems like, but I'm willing to bet that it wasn't a case of YouTube not liking what they had. I think they knew what they had. They just knew that they couldn't. Yeah, they couldn't control it, and they couldn't give it the home it deserved. So I mean, I think it worked out for everyone that it wound up on Netflix, which is where they wanted to be to begin with.
Yeah, I think they're getting way more audience members there too. To your point, and I think it's funny because we joke about Google, but there's that, what is it, the website killedbygoogle.com or something. Like add this to the list too, because they couldn't, like you said, they couldn't really support it. But before we jump into some of the topics, I think it's just maybe fair game to give the listeners, if you haven't seen this show, we're going to talk about spoilers here all through season 1 through 3. If you haven't watched the show and you've been meaning to, I highly recommend that you go do that. If everybody pretty much has a Netflix account these days, so it's out there and it's a super easy watch. I found that I binge this show very easily in like a day or two, because it's like a 30-minute episode or less. And it's only like 10 episodes per season or something. So it's a really easy watch. If you're a fan of Karate Kid on any level, you got to go out there and watch this. So that's your spoiler alert. So you're fair game to talk about whatever you want, Chris, here as we talk about this.
Yes, and also the highest possible recommend from me as well. I know I am a virtual stranger to your audience, but it is my favorite show, maybe ever, maybe at least number 1.5. So I couldn't possibly recommend watching it enough. It is very easily accessible on Netflix right now, and I think you can still even watch it on YouTube Premium as well. Yeah. So in case anyone has that, go seek it out. It's worth it. It's even worth plunking down $10 for.
Yeah, I would love to know the intersection of audience members that have YouTube Premium and don't have Netflix. I feel like it's such a weird mix of people. I mean, maybe I was one of those at one point, but that would be interesting. So before we jump into this, I'm curious about your take on Cobra Kai as a series. You sent me a link to some videos about, just basically, Terry Silver, like I am a Terry Silver fanboy, as everybody knows. I'll shout back out to episode 13. Our original episode, the Karate Kid Part 3, the Ballad of Terry Silver, as we so coined before some guy on Medium stole our title. Just having said that, we speculated like what might have happened after the series, and we didn't know at that time. I think we did that show in 2015, me and Badway. I had no idea that they were going to ever resurrect this thing. I had hoped that they would at some point. Did you ever see this coming? Talking about Cobra Kai as a series and just as anything, like, did you ever see that this would come?
No, I never could have anticipated what was in store with Cobra Kai. I think because we've seen things like this attempted, in the form of movie reboots and sequels, very late sequels where it just doesn't work because you don't have the right people at the helm and they don't understand what they're working with here. I think the fact that the big three, Josh Heel, John Hurwitz, and Hayden Schlossberg, I think the fact that they kind of zeroed in on this franchise as something that they want to expand on and create a world around is the only reason that this works and the only reason that we're still talking about it now, and that it wasn't a one season wonder or never even made it to series, because it's so easy to screw this up. It would have been so easy to take the concept of the Karate Kid and flip it on its head, but not in the way that the big three did. Flip it on its head in the way that Barney Stinson would have, and make Daniel the villain and, come at it from that more of a satirical end. Mm-hmm. But to do it with the respect for the source material and the nuance and just the understanding of the world that the creators have done it not only pays tribute to the original movies and the original series and that original screenplay, but it expands on it and it enhances my enjoyment of it. And as someone who I consider myself a very big original Karate Kid series fan, it's my number 2 franchise right behind Back to the Future. I hold it in very high regard. Yeah. It has a lot of emotional weight for me. This has only enhanced my enjoyment. So no, I could never have seen anything as good as this coming.
It's crazy, man. And when I think about this, and we could talk about, let me just ask you right now, of the first 3 movies, what's your favorite? Which one's your favorite? Is it 3? I know that's a layup of a question, I guess, but because my answer.
I'm gonna probably blow your mind, but it's 2.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
And I can't really give you a straight answer as to why. Obviously, the first one is the classic. And it's like when people talk about Back to the Future, it's like the first one is untouchable. And then people have varying degrees of, well, the sequels were okay, but, either they got progressively worse or they think 3 is better than 2. For me, I don't know why I like the Karate Kid Part 2 the most. I think I just really enjoy just the fact that they went to Okinawa, even though it's in real life Hawaii. But right. I just enjoy that aspect of it, the adventure that they're both going on, Mr. Miyagi and Daniel San just kind of being almost like this Doc and Marty-esque pairing. And I kind of just, it's just kind of a comfort. It's a movie I watched a lot on repeat when I was like doing papers and reports and things like that for school. So it was something that I always kind of would just throw on. The Karate Kid Part 3, though, I guess is kind of, in a way, also my favorite, because Terry Silver is my favorite character in the entire franchise. Just because, look at him. Like
that's all you need to say.
It's Terry Silver. So
I'm gonna have to link the video series that you sent me on Terry Silver analysis, because I didn't know such materials existed on the internet until you sent that to me.
And they didn't before, up until very recently.
Yeah.
It was like we were all just these weird, closeted Terry Silver enthusiasts wandering the earth and not connecting with each other because we had no reason to. But thankfully now we're all there's a conversation, and Terry Silver is now part of pop culture.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because and on one of the videos that you sent to me, and we were talking about this before we hit record. One of the things that I thought was cool was Thomas Ian Griffith, right? Like, you go back and we talked about it again, episode 13. Go check it out. I'll put it in the show notes. When we did the Karate Kid 3 episode, like, he put on an acting clinic. And honestly, there was a comment on one of the YouTube videos that said something along the lines of, I hope that Thomas Ian Griffith knows and appreciates how much he's loved by the fans. And, you know, back in the day when the third movie came out, it probably was hard because, I mean, there wasn't social media. There wasn't a way for fans to interact with celebrities outside of like fan mail, I guess, right? Or maybe like showing up to like a movie premiere or something. This guy was young in his career. It was his first movie. You go look back at that. And now when the season 4 speculation was coming out, I mean, even back in the very beginning, right? Season 1, people were like, when's Terry Silver going to show up? Because that was the last thing that happened in the series, right? And now people are saying, man, I hope he knows. And it's like, well, he better know, because when that teaser dropped for season 4, like, people lost their minds. Like, people like me, I was going berserk. I'm so excited. I'm still excited.
I am, still beside myself with excitement, to the point where Terry Silver is the wallpaper on my phone lock screen. Like, that level of excitement. Like, at the end of season 3, when Kreese makes that call, I was standing, and I'm not even ashamed to say there were tears coming from my eyes. And my wife is looking at me like, why did I marry this person? But like, it's just, I don't know. And I don't think he knew. I don't think he could have had any idea, especially because, you know, the director and writer of The Karate Kid 3, that wasn't at all what they had envisioned. That wasn't supposed to be the movie. Terry Silver only exists because Martin Kove, who plays John Kreese, was doing a pilot at the time. And because he was working on that series, he had to divide time, so he couldn't do any heavy lifting for part 3. So that's where Terry Silver comes in. And I have the feeling that as it was being made, it was just kind of like, well, we're mailing this in. And I couldn't... maybe in terms of story and some things, like, technically, I guess it's not the best movie, but like, Thomas Ian Griffith was a tour de force in that movie.
He is that movie. It's amazing.
He's an absolute blast. So I kind of almost categorize it as like, there's the Karate Kid Part 1 and 2, then there's Terry Silver, then there's the Ballad of Terry Silver, to quote you and not the Medium article. And then there's the next Karate Kid and Jaden Smith. But Terry Silver, for me, is like, no, that is his stamp on the series. That's his movie, and everyone else just happens to be in it.
I totally agree with you. And we got a Last Row Podcast hashtag or colon. We'll get to that later. We have a lot of Terry Silver speculation to get through towards the end of this episode as we talk more about maybe season 4. But before we jump into maybe the next topic, do you think when you signed up to watch the first season, did you watch that on YouTube Red? Like, did you sign up to watch YouTube Red just to watch it?
Oh, yeah. So I was very early on. It dropped in the summer of 2018 or May 2018. And I would have been like, first few weeks, I would have been signing up to YouTube Red to watch it. At first, when I saw the trailer, I didn't quite know what to make of it. And I was a little bit afraid, and I had that moment of like, I don't know, is this going to be like leaning into like, oh, look how wacky this universe is, and kind of like a deconstruction in comedy form type of thing. So I wasn't quite sure, especially based on the first trailer that came out. And then I watched the first episode, which I think they put up like the first 2 for free.
It was free.
And then I didn't even wait till the second. I signed up for a free trial of YouTube Red, devoured the first season. Yeah. And then it was just, you know, the long wait for season 2. And then it just, somewhere along the way, I just realized like, I never realized that I needed this, but I did. And it made me an even bigger Karate Kid fan. And like, those were movies that I'd go back and watch every year anyway. Yeah. And like, now I have a reason. It's to gear up for a new season of Cobra Kai. So I was a YouTube Red before YouTube Premium, even before the rebrand. So that's how, you know, almost day one. So I'm very happy for that.
You said it best earlier too, as you were talking about it, when you were talking about what you weren't sure what to expect. I agree with you 100%. Like, I didn't know what to expect going into the series. And maybe this is a good segue into some of the characters. But before I say that, the piece that I think you nailed earlier was the fact that you said they seem to have a good respect for the source material. And it wasn't something that was a deconstruction or some comedic aspect or comedic, let's turn this into some parody of itself. Like they knew, it seemed like the creators and the writers, they knew what they had, and they approached it with like a respect and a reverence almost that it deserved. But it also had some funny moments. Like, I mean, it's not completely serious, but at the same time, it has like what it needs to be. It is, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's the perfect mixture to me of comedy and drama where it needs to be. And a lot of the drama is heightened because of the world we're talking about. You know, a world where karate in the Valley is as big as football in Texas. Like it has to be heightened, but the comedy is so there, and it's not the kind of comedy where it's just like, we need a joke here. It's just natural occurrences, and it's just the interactions between the characters, which are very, very well written. And it's just, yeah, they couldn't do any of that without the respect that they have for the source material. When you're talking about a movie like The Karate Kid, it's like either you love it and you embrace it, or you're doing this project ironically and as a gag. And if you're doing it for that, like, then why even
bother?
You know, they had to convince so many people. They had to convince Ralph Macchio and Billy Zabka and Martin Kove, and, you know, get Robert Mark Kamen, the writer, get his blessing. And just so many people had to be on board for this to work. And you couldn't have done that if they didn't have the utmost respect for it, because as the writers have said, this is their Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I'm with them on that. For me too. Like this and Back to the Future, like those are my franchises. Like that, this is what I live for. And like, just the fact that, you know, we got something of such quality, you know, with this series, it's still kind of like, I almost kind of like don't believe that it's actually
like, is
happening.
This real?
Yeah, like is this? Yeah, like when we got that Terry Silver teaser, it's just like,
oh my God.
How? Like, how is this?
I can't wait.
I remember the very lonely feeling I had like 4 or 5 years ago of watching The Karate Kid Part 3 and just being like, surely I'm not the only one who realizes what a blast this guy is. And then going on Twitter and just searching Terry Silver just to see if anyone's, you know, making funny memes or tweets. And then finding a podcast called The Last Row, who had a new episode out about The Karate Kid Part 3, the Ballad of Terry Silver. So I was just like, all right, I'm on board. And then I click play, and then from there it becomes one of my favorite podcasts of all time. I couldn't believe that there were other people out there who felt like I could believe it, but at the same time I was like, I don't know, maybe I'm just really weird because this doesn't seem to be a very well regarded movie. But there are people out there who like gravitate towards this movie because of him, and the fact that they understand it is another thing, where they could have easily had the reverence for Daniel and Mr. Miyagi and Johnny and all that. But the fact that the big three are like, no, Terry Silver. Yeah, we're bringing him in. He exists. You know, everyone, this expanded universe, it all is valid. You know, we could see Julie Pierce from the next Karate Kid. Like, who knows? Like,
yeah,
we could see Michael Ironside as Colonel Dugan. Like, anything is fair game. So, like, I'm so down for whatever they do at this point because they've earned that trust.
Oh, they absolutely have. And I think, you know, like you said, I think seeing where it was going, like, I always hoped that they would get to a Terry Silver moment. And I think, you know, we're seeing the fruits of the waiting and the labor. But let's jump into some of the characters, because I think I want to maybe touch on like Daniel LaRusso, Johnny Lawrence, some of the big players. We'll talk about some of the tangential characters. You know, I know that the next generation of people, like Daniel's kids, Johnny's son, all these other folks are important characters. We'll maybe touch on them as we go through it. But let's start with Daniel LaRusso. Think about like the beginning of the series. They ended The Last Karate Kid. I think in our episode, our episode on Terry Silver, we joked that maybe Miyagi and him died after this. You know, Terry Silver actually killed them, and then we found out that wasn't true. not how we speculated in episode 13. Daniel LaRusso has an auto dealership or set of auto dealerships, LaRusso Auto. So he's selling cars in his life. He seems to be very successful when the series starts. He's got a family. I mean, he's doing pretty well. He's in a happy marriage. Does he have what it takes to be a dealership owner? Is he only, like, the question I have to you is, What do you think his success is? Is he good at his job, or is it because he's doing karate chops and he's the All Valley champion and people just want to go buy a car from this person that won this thing? I'm curious what your take is on this.
Okay, so I'm of two minds about this because on the one hand, if you look at the Karate Kid Part 3, he brings this total used car salesman energy to that role when he is trying to sell Mr. Miyagi on opening up the bonsai shop.
The bonsai shop,
like,
yeah.
Total used car salesman. What can I do to get you into this bonsai shop today? Type of energy. Like, to the point where I'm almost like, is Daniel the character coked up right now? Like, what is going on with him? So he totally has that energy to where the point where, you know, I'm watching Cobra Kai for the first time. I'm like, oh yeah, of course he's a car salesman, of course, because that seemed like the natural progression, but also because of, you know, Mr. Miyagi giving him that classic car and just maybe that kind of planted a seed and, you know, fill in the gaps from there. So on the one hand, I thought it was such a natural role for him and such a natural career. On the other hand, though, I think Amanda is the brains of the operation.
100% agree.
The day-to-day, I think she is making it happen.
Couldn't
and
agree
he is
more.
more of the figurehead, the face of the company, the gimmick, if you will. I think Amanda's the brains behind the family and the operation. Yeah. If we're being honest,
he's like the mascot of the place, and she's like doing the actual, like you said, the actual business and the actual work. Because you even see it, right? Like he starts neglecting his business like throughout the series as he's doing some of the stuff with Miyagi-Do and all that, and Amanda is sitting there basically keeping everything afloat between the family and the business. To your point, I agree with that 100%, and I do wonder how much of that it's like, you know, he's essentially a celebrity, so that's where he's getting his business from. You know, LaRusso Auto, and people are coming in there, they want to take a picture with him as he's karate chopping. You know, what else do you think about him where he is with life? Because, you know, I'm surprised, you know, you're in California, like I get the All Valley competition is a big deal, but I also think, you know, in California, it's not like I live in Pennsylvania here, and there's like some smaller towns here where like, okay, this one team won the state championship years ago, and that becomes the thing that you talk about for 35 years. I never really got that impression from, I guess, where they're living, but maybe I'm wrong on it. I don't know. I guess he is really the biggest deal ever because he was kind of like this amateur that came in and won this thing. I don't know.
I think you don't get a sense of that until you start to see him take pictures with customers doing the crane kick pose, to the point where it's like, yeah, to a certain pocket of people, this is a big deal. And like, you even have the characters like Dimitri like poke fun at this, like this has been going on for 50 years, like how, so I think that they treat that with a sense of, you know, come at it from a comedic aspect, but also it's like, no, this is like, judging just based off of the movies, it's like, yes, this is a big deal, this is a major event, and this is of the utmost importance, at least to this pocket of people, to the point where we have advisory boards and this, you know, this rich history of this tournament. And you know, I really think that a lot of it is him, you know, coasting off of that, at least in terms of the way he markets himself and but to him, it's not a gimmick. That's just his life. And that's just how he finds balance and finds his inner peace and his inner Mr. Miyagi. But I think, again, that a lot of that goes back to Amanda too, because she, in real life and in the dealership, she brings him back. She pulls him back to a sense of grounding, which is exactly what Mr. Miyagi did. So in that sense, she's kind of like the Miyagi surrogate, and like at the same time dealing with him with this, like these comedic quips that just fly, which when you think about it is exactly what Miyagi did as well, you know, just in a different style of comedy, a different type of sense of humor, but Daniel needs that. So I think so much of his success and just how far he's gotten in his life, he can probably attribute to, you know, Amanda coming in his life at maybe just the right time, you know, when he needed that, because he'd be totally lost without Miyagi. Like, forget about it.
Oh my God, yeah. And he still has those moments throughout the series where he's like down and out and he's got to go into like the dojo and he's like looking at the picture and just kind of meditating or doing, you know, some of the mental, like, you know, karate aspects of trying to, he's missing him a lot. I mean, he was a big part of his life, you know, he's like his mentor and his friend. And, you know, it's an interesting angle on that. I think you mentioned something in the beginning too that I wanted to ask you, but you mentioned about how the series could have went with the angle of like him as the villain. I wanted to ask you, because there was all this stuff, right? Before the show came out, there was all the internet speculation of, oh, was Daniel the actual villain? It was like BuzzFeed articles or whatever the hell they were. and this was like the hot topic to talk about. Do you think that the series sort of admits he's the villain, or do you think it's more gray? I'm just curious, like, how do you feel the series has handled his character? And we'll talk about Johnny next, because that's sort of like the antithesis of Daniel. Like, do you think that the series has handled his character well? Do you like where they took it? I'm just kind of curious, as a huge fan of the series, what do you think about the way that they've tackled him?
I think that they've done it the way that they've done everything else, which is pulling back the veil of the 80s and showing you, there's much more to this type of a story than the black and white. Whereas, in the 80s movies, we know that Daniel's the hero just based on certain music cues and things that are meant to evoke a certain feeling. And when we watch it, and obviously just, the formula of that type of a movie, an underdog story, but we watch these things today and there's so much anti-hero content out there. And there's so much, but you thought it was the villain, but he's really the hero, that type of thing. And a lot of that I just kind of roll my eyes at, like these deconstructions of
cheesy.
The way we tell these stories. But I think this does it in such a great way where it's like, he's both. Like, in certain situations, he is a villain. He acts villainous at times in this series. His actions towards Johnny and Cobra Kai, and at times Johnny comes out like looking completely like the innocent party. But then you can flip it around in so many other situations. And I think this series handles it in such a great way. And I guess when we talk about Kreese, we can really dive into it, is that neither of these boys would be acting the way they are if they hadn't been touched by this influence of John Kreese, and in 100%. Very different ways, and how they respond and react to it. So I think what it tells us is that, we go through things, we have these experiences, and we may, even have trauma coming out on the other end, but how we respond to that is our own responsibility, which is what I take away, at least, from some of the larger themes that I think they're presenting.
And I think you said that very, very eloquently and way better than I could have ever put that. I mean, no, for real. Like, and I think maybe it's let's talk about Johnny, because Daniel's one aspect of this, and you mentioned it, right? Kreese is that sort of underlying, like, almost like ominous person that affected their lives, to your point. And the thing that I found just so, I don't know, maybe it sucked me into the show, was just the way that you got to know more about Johnny. And from my perspective, Johnny's my favorite character in the show, like, hands down, just because I like to see what his background was, where he came from. And you didn't get that in the 80s movies, to your point. Like, you just knew, okay, Daniel's the hero. It's very black and white, just as you described. Whereas maybe there was something behind the scenes here going on with Johnny. You found out about his family and the pieces about, the rich versus poor aspect of things. He's very much, he was this rich kid in the first movie where he's, at the country club and all that stuff. And then you start seeing him now, and he's basically, the super at this hotel, or the apartment complex, and he's living, sort of down and out. And the series starts out with him in this rough spot. And the series, I got to give them a lot of credit. They really made me feel for him. And I just kind of instantly gravitated toward wanting to learn more about his character. And I think they handle his arc so well, to the point where you really get to know him. And even though he's doing things, or maybe teaching these kids things that aren't really great, I can kind of relate to why he's doing it, even though, if you ask me in real life, I'd probably be more associated with, like, Daniel, because I believe in more the Miyagi-Do side of things, not the Cobra Kai side, strike hard, strike fast, no mercy, all that kind of stuff. So I'm curious what your take is on Johnny. Like, do you feel that, do you relate more with him? Do you feel like, he has, like, maybe more of a reason to be the way that he is? Just curious what your take is.
I'm completely with you. Like, I feel like I could have said that exact same thing. I think that's really the benefit, though, of how one-sided the original movies were in, for all of the villains that it presented, is that maybe not in the case of Terry Silver, we do get to know, a little bit more about him, but especially for Johnny, it's like we only see what Daniel sees for the most part of him. So to be with Johnny in these moments that have nothing to do with the hero of the story, it gives you so much more of an introspective view into him, and it's hard not to root for him when you actually see that, especially since the tables have turned and we see him so down on his luck, and then we see, Dean Martin Daniel driving around listening to Dean Martin and just being, can just completely on the upswing of life, and Johnny being on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. But I think that then presents like such a great, like, no, these guys are two sides of the same coin, and like they could, either of them, you switch the positions and it would be the exact same way because of, again, that outside influence from Kreese. But when they actually get in a room together and can talk to each other without, there being fisticuffs involved, they actually get along and they have more in common than they thought, which is what I love the most about this show. I think had we gotten more of Johnny in the movie, I don't think that this show would be possible because there's nothing more to explore, I
agree. And it's funny, like as you were saying that, part of what I found myself gravitating towards in like the first season was like just rooting against Daniel in a weird way. I don't know why. Like I just was on Johnny's side because I felt like he was down and out. Like he was in a bad situation. He was stuck in this I don't know, his life was kind of in a spiral, and he was just trying to get his stuff together, and Daniel already was in this place of privilege. It was like the exact opposite of what you think you saw in the original movies, and there was just something, I don't know, there was something about Johnny where I was like, man, I just was rooting for him, even though he was doing stuff that I was like, man, I don't know that I would be teaching kids this or whatever. And it just was such a weird feeling. And I found myself almost thinking like Daniel was cheesy, and I was and I went back and forth on it. It's like a conflict where I'm like, wait a second. Like I actually like Miyagi-Do, and this is the right way to do things. But I'm watching and I'm like, okay, I can kind of understand this. And this is where I wanted to ask you about the students and the pupils, because you've got Miguel in here, who's this young kid who's sort of, and you're showing how this works for these different people as part of different parts of life. And now it's like that next younger generation. He kind of has that arc himself, and it's tied into directly to Daniel. And I guess that ties into Robbie too, which you ultimately find out is Johnny's son. So how do you think that plays in? And did you have any like preference for one side or the other?
For me, it becomes three-dimensional as soon as Johnny and Miguel meet, because then it's like, wow, we have this character where we can see all sides within him. We can see so much of Daniel in him, but then we see a lot of Johnny in him, especially as it gets later in that first season. And just the fact that there are multiple characters where I feel that way. Like they are both Johnny and Daniel at the same time. Like there are multiple characters within both dojos, and to the point where I feel like it's such a just a bold statement that they are making of, this is like, these guys are two sides of the same coin, and so can anyone can be that, depending on who their mentor is, depending on the person in their life. And where we start with Johnny to where we end up with him once Miguel is in his life. Miguel is such a positive mentor for him in this weird
like
role
a reverse
reversal
mentor.
way. Yeah, it's like he brings so much out of Johnny that was always there. He just never had the opportunity to express that. And then Johnny brings so much out of Miguel that was always there that he never had the ability to express. And they benefit each other in that way. And then sure, it goes too far, in certain instances, but that was the case with Daniel as well. Like it all really depended on where he was at in that moment and who his mentor was, who he was listening to. I think like one of the probably the biggest theme of the show is mentors are really important. The people in your life who are shaping you are really important, whether it's your parent or another family member or chosen family or whatever. Not chosen from Karate Kid Part 2, but and that's another thing too. It's like, again, when we can sit down with these people that we have these bitter rivalries with and just hash it out, it's like we find that we have more in common with them than we thought. So I think that's probably the best thing about the show. And where it gets really interesting is where you see these kids repeating the same mistakes that Johnny and Daniel repeated. And, history repeats itself. It's a line from You're the Best Around by Joe Esposito, and it never made sense in the original movie. That song was originally supposed to be in Rocky 3, but it totally makes sense when you take it in the context of this show, with how much history repeats itself.
It's crazy, man. And like you mentioned with the mentorship and all the different things, just even looking at how they're all learning from each other and you're watching them repeat some of the same mistakes. And I gotta give acting credit, man, to William Zabka. Like he deserves awards for his job on this show. Like he's done such a good job of playing a serious down and out guy, but he's got like comedic aspects that he's really good at. Like I didn't realize how good of an actor he was because I've not really watched other things with him in it, but I have to give him all kinds of credit. Like he's really nailed the role and he's taken it to another level. Like people always wondered, oh, what's going on with Johnny Lawrence? Like what's his deal? And I think William Zabka has just done such a good job of portraying the Johnny Lawrence character to like a new generation of viewers and even people that have seen him in the original trilogy. I just have to give him a lot of credit.
Especially with how pigeonholed he was coming out of that first movie.
Totally
to where
agree.
He was always just the bully in, insert 80s movie here. And then he like kind of toiled away in the 90s doing these other like offshoot martial arts shoot fighting movies to where he didn't really have the chance to even kind of stretch out and expand and show his depth, but he really has that. And especially now, you figure with age, a lot of that also comes, and he's just, but just for the career that he's had and the career he could have had, it's like, it's such a shame, but I'm so glad that he's getting his props now. And like, we can give him his flowers now. Like, he really does deserve some sort of award. And honestly, Ralph Macchio too. I feel like, for as much as people might want to say about, the Karate Kid being cheesy and Ralph Macchio this and whatever, like, I just think everyone is so good in this movie. In the original movie, you had Pat Morita giving just amazing performance, and like to rise to the level of that for these actors is something that I'm sure that they're not, it's not out of their mind that's what they have to live up to. And I honestly think that everyone all across the board, and even the kids, I just think everyone is so good in their roles.
Yeah.
It's great. It's just a very well cast show.
I definitely agree. Let's talk about Kreese because, I think the movie or when the show came out, I don't know, like we said earlier, they knew what they were. I don't know if they always had the end game in mind. Like when the first season came out, maybe they did. They probably had this arc that they had written out. I hadn't read anything that talked about it. I'm sure that it existed. But, when we got the impression, hey, maybe Kreese is going to show up, that was pretty intense in itself. I mean, we'll talk about Terry Silver in a second, but where the hell was Kreese? What was he doing since the Karate Kid 3? And like, what was he doing before he showed up? They haven't really talked about this. He's like a grifter or something. Like,
what's going on? There's still a lot of gaps that I don't think it's kind of like the Joker's backstory. I don't think we'll ever have the definitive one. I don't know if we'll ever know specific details. He's alluded to it definitely at times within the series. He's talked to Johnny and he mentioned a war buddy of mine offered me a job, but it felt like a handout, that type of thing. But it's so vague. And again, like timelines with him and his character, he makes up, just flat out fabricates so many stories that he's not a reliable source of information. So I don't know if we'll ever get that, but what I imagine is that there had to be some sort of animosity or hard feelings after the events of the Karate Kid 3 between him and Terry, whether or not either of them will admit it. I think that there was probably definitely, distance there, definitely with Mike Barnes. Like I think that there's just legitimate heat between Mike Barnes and those two. But for them, I think they probably lost touch. At the end of season 3, Kreese, he calls who we believe is Terry Silver and he says long time. I think he means that. I don't know. I don't know if they've necessarily interacted in between. I can definitely speculate about what Terry Silver's been doing.
I'm curious your take on that.
But I think for just in terms of Kreese, I think he's probably just been around different homeless shelters. I mean, you could take the route of maybe he started doing like shoot fighting. If you want to like look at the roles that Martin Kove did after the Karate Kid movies, he did the shoot fighter movies with William Zabka. So I could easily see that being something that the character of Kreese could have gotten into, especially like the dawn of MMA, in the 90s, I could have seen him maybe being involved or at least very interested in that, something like that. But from there, I don't know. It just seems like a sad story, like any way you slice it.
And it's funny because like I look at everyone, obviously they look older. He looks really damn old in this show. Like you look at him, but he's still in pretty good shape for, the fact that he's wearing sleeveless, karate gis and stuff. I got to give the guy credit, but he definitely looks, everyone looks older, but he looks pretty old. I'm curious to see how, it seems like in the teaser, Thomas Ian Griffin still has the ponytail, whether it's real or a clip on. We'll see. I would like to imagine that it's real. He's been growing it out.
He was growing his hair out. I think
that's awesome.
The thing that tipped off a lot of people was when Josh Gad did the Reunited Apart special for the Karate Kid. Thomas Ian Griffith was on the call, and he had long hair, and he kept a very low profile, like from part 3 up until recent years. So the only photos you saw of him was with this like very short, like almost Ted Danson-esque haircut, and that was something that tipped off a lot of people like, ooh, like he could be getting ready, growing the hair out,
All us Terry Silver enthusiasts online here thinking about this. Yeah, I definitely think let's talk a little bit about Terry Silver in a second, but maybe before we get to that point, what are some of the other characters maybe we didn't touch on, people that you like in the series so far? Of all the 3 seasons so far, is there any other favorite that you have? Or I know it's hard to say favorite or least favorite. So is there anybody else that you found that you really liked, you gravitated towards, that they've done a good job with, whether it's part of the younger generation of kids, the older folks? What's like your take on that?
Well, I'll start by saying that I genuinely do enjoy the young cast just as much as I enjoy the legacy cast. I really do. Miguel for me is an easy one that jumps out just because he ties in so much with Johnny. I think for me, Johnny and Miguel as a package deal would probably just be my favorite thing about the show.
Yeah.
I just think that there's so much there to love, honestly.
Me too.
Just with their relationship. For like one specific favorite character just on the show outside of that, I don't know why necessarily, but I've always gravitated towards Hawk. Yeah. And it's the type of thing where as soon as he took the turn to become Hawk, and then, he's just going to progressively get worse and worse and basically be like the Dutch from Johnny's old gang. He's going to be like that type of figure. But eventually knowing that with this series, he'll probably come around. And when he does come around, it's going to be a really gratifying moment. So to get that in season 3, I was so on board for it. And that was one of the moments that told me that, I think he's probably like one of my absolute favorite characters from the show.
I'll say that, and when I say I disagree with you, I don't disagree, because I hate Hawk, but I respect him. And here's why I say this. Got to give the actor credit, right? You get these actors that do such a good job of making you hate the character. But I also say that I could see where his like troubled past is, because he had the issue with the cleft lip, and Johnny said that in the beginning, right? That's the first thing that people are going to notice you by. So you got to get a gimmick. What's your thing? And he comes back with the Hawk, and he was so much of a bully. He like went heel so hard that you could tell it was a front for like lack of confidence and all this kind of stuff. And I like that it was kind of nuanced in that fact. And again, the actor, I don't know his name, but
Jacob Bertrand.
There you go, Jacob Bertrand. Got to give him a lot of credit. Like, I think about like Game of Thrones, like with Cersei Lannister, like Lena Headey, like she does such a great job of making you hate her. I got to give the actor a lot of credit. And
for sure,
and when I say I hate Hawk, I don't hate the actor or the character. It's more like I hate what he does to people, but I also see the troubled nature that he has. You know what I mean? So it's like a nuanced character that's really well done, I think, in the show.
For sure. And he's doing his job so well, and they're doing a great job writing the character. But I'm going to say something that I don't know if this is going to blow your mind, but to me, I said that there was a parallel with Dutch, but to me, Hawk is the parallel with Terry Silver.
He kind of is.
For the young crop.
Yeah.
Because Terry Silver, as we know, starts out as Twig, and what does he do? He basically jacks his friend's style and grows a ponytail and steals his style and gives people something else to focus on, and with the slick back hair. And that's exactly what Hawk does. He flips the script in that way, where he comes back with the mohawk and the attitude and the swagger. And we still see the moments of Eli peek out from time to time. And we haven't seen that with adult Terry Silver. We haven't seen Twig pop out. So I'm very curious to see, and this gets into speculation territory, but I'm very curious to see if we'll get any time in between, maybe like deep Dynatox lore, or like early days of Cobra Kai, and we see the interaction between Kreese and Silver, where the balance of power is still that Kreese is in charge and Silver is still kind of subservient, but then at some point that flips. So I'm interested to see where they go with that, if we get flashbacks or anything kind of on that order.
I love that you went there, and I think let's just jump to Terry Silver's speculation, because I think it's a great segue. Anything else I was going to talk about doesn't matter, because when you bring up Terry Silver, we just got to go there, because that's how my mind works. But I love what you said about maybe, like, especially when they did the flashbacks, because that was one of my favorite parts of the most recent season. Just seeing where it is, they pulled the full fake out on me, because I really believed that Terry was the guy that had the ponytail in the flashback. I didn't make the connection. Maybe I wasn't paying attention right or whatever, but it seemed like they were trying to make you go down that path. Then when they said the names at the end, it was really interesting. But I thought, the backstory that it added, and we talked about Kreese before, but the backstory that it added to Kreese, it gave him a little bit more to relate to, and you could understand him. But not only that, it started to show you the relationship that they built going all the way back to War Buddy days. And they mentioned that in Karate Kid 3, but you don't really know much about it. You just know back in Vietnam. But I really loved where they were going with that. And I'm so excited to see, especially like what you said, if there's anything in between, Vietnam, after Karate Kid 3, like what happened in between? And how did Terry Silver turn into the CEO of Dynatox? Like, how did he take his life from, point A to point B? Like, it's just so interesting to me, because we don't know any of this. And it's like exciting for a Terry Silver enthusiast like me.
and it's also just so important to the whole story, because none of this would exist without that promise from Terry to Kreese. Anything you need, I have your back. I owe you big time your whole life. That promise, that is why we have this entire story. And it just to think that it was such a last minute, afterthought, oh, let's just throw this in, kind of just throwaway thing in the Karate Kid 3 to the point where now we have an entire series that is exploring that and going deep into it. And how deep they go, I guess, still remains to be seen. But like, I'm just like running wild with speculation, just thinking about where they could possibly go with, not only Kreese's backstory and exploring more of that, but getting more into Terry Silver and how Dynatox became a thing and what Dynatox really even is. Does it still exist? All these questions that we that have just been burning inside of us for all these years.
Well, it's crazy because, like you said, they just kind of accidentally made this amazing character because Martin Kove had a scheduling conflict, and it's just amazing to me how, looking back on it, people do treat the third movie as like, oh, I see a lot of articles now where it pops up and it's like, the third movie's garbage. It's not really that good, but watch it for Silver. Or, hey, the third movie's garbage, just in general. And I'm like, it's really not that bad if you have like the right expectations going into it. And the fact that Thomas Ian Griffith puts on an acting clinic and gives us this amazing character, it just adds so much to it. And the fact that you said it ties everything together, because had they not made that promise back in Vietnam or coming out of Vietnam, and even just him rescuing him for season 3, or sorry, the third movie, we wouldn't even be here where we are. John Kreese wouldn't be a thing. Like, it just wouldn't exist. So Terry Silver is such an integral character to the story. Like, I can't wait to see where this is going to go. What do you think they're going to do with him? I'm just curious. Like, where are they going to take this?
There are so many directions that you can go. So I'm always the wait and see type of person. I don't like go into anything with preconceived, especially this show, because they've kind of earned that trust from me. Like, no, I go in with just open eyes and an open heart, and I'll see where they go with this, because I genuinely have enjoyed everything that they've done up to this point, and they've earned that trust. But for me, like, just to think about Terry Silver existing in modern times, like I'm assuming he moved out of California at some point, probably due to the damaged reputation. You know, scandals didn't blow up quite as big as they do now back then, but at some point, I think maybe even just for just the culture, maybe he moved out of California. Like maybe he lives in Vegas, maybe he's in Colorado, maybe he operates out of Saudi Arabia. Like who like like as far as that, like I think the scope of that could be whatever they want. I could definitely see him like being involved in just like all of the current day shady things that you could possibly be. Like he probably has his own form of cryptocurrency.
Terry coin,
Quicksilver,
Quicksilver coin,
Quicksilver coin. like just there's I feel like there's so many modern day situations where you could insert him. Like he could probably be the figurehead of an environmental group, like and just like the total facade of how he presents himself before the fight at the end of the Karate Kid 3s. Oh, karate gave me discipline and taught me about honor and fair play and all this crap. And you know that he's lying through his teeth. Like, I feel like that's just him in his business dealings. And I feel like he expands upon that. So I could totally see him being like, maybe even like the head of like an activist group while simultaneously also destroying the environment.
Yeah,
like that's the
facade.
Type of, yeah, that's the type of guy I feel like Terry Silver is.
Oh my God, dude, you nailed it. Because back when we did our other episode, go back and listen again, it's in the show notes. We were like laughing about it because, you know, think about in modern times, if a CEO temporarily paused their duties as a CEO of a major corporation and then just decided to like wreck and ruin a teenager's life, like what kind of scandal would that be in modern times? It would be like, it would be on every news channel ever. Like, would their stock tank? I mean, we speculated this on the episode, but this would like be irreparable damage to like his reputation. Like, I'm so curious to see how they're going to handle this whole thing.
He would immediately be ousted. You know, it would start with a long Twitter thread. It would start with a really long Twitter thread detailing all of the abuse that he inflicted upon Daniel. And, you know, I could even see Mike Barnes being the whistleblower. Honestly, because that's part of where I think the story goes is that I think there's this huge falling out between him and Mike Barnes, and maybe even taking legal action against Mike Barnes to recoup the weekly draw that he was giving him leading up to the fight. Like, I feel like there could be either some sort of legal action taken, or maybe if he preferred to keep it, you know, off the books, maybe even some other sort of retaliation towards Mike Barnes. So I feel like where we could possibly see Mike Barnes, and this is jumping ahead, but like I feel like we could see him in a place of where he wants revenge against Terry Silver.
100%.
You know, the way he probably feels the way about Silver that Johnny felt about Kreese at the beginning of the series.
That's the thing too, with when you go back to Terry Silver and Barnes, like their relationship's super interesting as well. And I'm curious if Barnes is going to show up in this, or if they're going to do kind of a season 5 thing with Barnes, maybe set that up. But I was thinking about Silver too, in the way that let's say he's down and out now, and if his life is in ruins, is he going to want to come back now? He sees that Kreese is in trouble. Now he wants to come back and get revenge against Daniel or somebody because, you know, maybe he lost his company, maybe he lost some of these other things. I'm so curious to see where they're going to go. And man, you said in the beginning of the episode, when you saw the teaser and you saw the ponytail and you see him standing backwards, which I'm going to use as the picture for the cover episode, I think we need to do. I think that's what it has to be on the website for this, like the silhouette of the ponytail, right? I mean, that's like part of why the villain scale exists on this show, because of the ponytail. I mean, he is the quintessential man with a ponytail, the villain with a ponytail. I can't wait to see where they're going to go with this. I'm so excited. And the fact that Thomas Ian Griffith is deciding to come back for this, like, what a treat, man. I'm so excited. I'm just so happy.
I was worried. I'm going to be honest. I was worried that maybe he'd be like, nah, I'm leaving that behind me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not, especially just because of the reputation that the Karate Kid 3 has had, you know, for all these years. And again, like we said, I don't think he knew how people felt about it. But now that we can give him his flowers, I think he's totally on board just from seeing like behind the scenes photos of him just being like all smiles, which is totally weird to see him with the silver ponytail in a gi and just be smiling from ear to ear because he just looks like he's having just an amazing time. But I feel like he doesn't even really realize what he did back then and how much there still is in the tank for that character, to the point where they could call back to things in the Karate Kid 3. Like his assistant mentions a grand jury that he said bribe him.
Yeah, exactly.
What if that didn't work? You know, he could have, maybe he did some prison time, you know, like we don't know. Like, and that ties into another thing as well. He says, you know, bribe them, talk to the DA, Willie Cole, have him over for that type of thing.
Yeah.
That could easily play in, because this is another theory that people have. The name Willie Cole could be related to Tom Cole, who is Daniel's rival car dealer.
Yeah, the car dealer guy.
There's people, you know, the creators, they don't do things like that on accident, or they don't just throw that out there. So there could be some sort of tie there. Maybe that's how Terry once again makes it his mission to destroy Daniel LaRusso and everything and everyone around him. Maybe he's sabotaging cars in the LaRusso auto lot. He's sending out Snake and Dennis at night to do that. Maybe he's somehow sabotages Daniel's deal with Doyona that he just made. You know, maybe he's planning fake stories about Daniel in the media. I could easily see him having ties to like these like super right-wing media outlets. Yeah, like I could totally see like that type of thing.
Man, it's funny. You know, if we don't get at least one business deal in a bathrobe or some type of phone call in a sauna or a bathtub, I'm going to be disappointed, because, you know, hopefully he still has that swanky, like, he had that like Mayan style house where it had like Mayan architecture and all of this crazy stuff. Hopefully he still got his money. Hopefully he's still got his place that he lives in. But I'm hoping that we at least get one of these crazy business deals going on. Phone call. I guess they don't have a Zach Morris cell phone anymore at the time. I don't know what he's going to have, but, you know, maybe he's like, I'm imagining him as like Elon Musk or somebody, like just some crazy like tech guru now or some craziness. But it's good. I just can't wait. I can't wait. And I should know this, did they give a date for when this is dropping? I don't think they said yet, right? It's just this year.
It's coming out this year. My guess would probably be around like October.
Yeah.
That's just fall. My guess, just based on, you know, they wrapped up filming, I think, at the end of April. So plenty of time for post-production, and with how much teasing they're doing right now, and they're starting that process, you know, we're not even that far removed from when season 3 dropped. So I think we're on an accelerated schedule just based on how long the wait was for season 3. I think they want to deliver, especially now that they have an exponentially growing fan base. I think they want to deliver something real quick.
I think the move to Netflix, like we said in the beginning, and maybe this is a good way to kind of wrap things up, but the move to Netflix was, I think, the best thing for this show, because they built enough of an audience on YouTube and they kind of knew what it was. People were disappointed when they heard that YouTube was dropping it, or at least shopping it around. And when it moved to Netflix, I mean, I can't imagine a better place. Like, I don't think it would have done as well on like a Hulu or even like an HBO Max, for example, because pretty much everybody has Netflix at this point. Like, I would say it's the most, besides Disney, maybe it's the most popular streaming service. It couldn't have found a better home, and they've got the support from Netflix. I mean, this is the type of show that you would think would do well there. So I'm excited for it.
It's been doing really well. It was in the top charts for a long time when it came out. And I know, you know, Netflix, just based on what, you know, fans have heard, Netflix is very happy with the show. I am a little bit afraid, because I know how cancel happy Netflix can be, even with shows that are big hits for them, you know. But I figure if, you know, another Netflix show I like is Atypical. I feel like if they did 4 seasons of Atypical, which is a show that I don't hear a lot of people talk about, I feel like they got to give Cobra Kai at least 3 seasons, 3 Netflix original seasons.
Yeah.
Like, and the creators have talked about, they want to do about like 6-7 seasons. So that would be right around, but they've also talked about spinoffs, which is something that's been kind of in the air as well, which I would totally be down for a Young Kreese and Young Terry spinoff.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
I don't even have to say it.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, you're right though. I think I've seen something about Netflix where they do, it's like a 3-season thing. I don't know if it's speculation or whatever, but they say, they owe certain contract, you know, value after season 3. So that's where they try to do these 3-season arcs. I don't know if it's different with the fact that, like you said, it's 3 Netflix seasons versus maybe 3 full seasons. I'm very curious to see where this is going to go and if it'll land, but it's ripe for spinoffs. It's got that sort of universe of itself where there's plenty of stories to tell, whether it's old stories or new stories. One thing that we didn't touch on that I forgot to mention, you mentioned Karate Kid 2 was your favorite movie. Three's my favorite of all of them, even though 1 is still like the best, I think, but 3's my favorite. I think, but the piece that they did in the last season where he went out to Japan, I love that part, and the way that he, connected with Chosen, and he had that reconciliation, and they, sort of made up, and I just really liked that storyline, and that was one of my favorite parts of the last season, besides maybe some of those flashbacks in Vietnam. I thought it was really well done, and it was something that I wasn't sure how they would do that and if it would pay off well, when I heard that it was going to happen. But I thought that they executed that really well.
Totally. That, to me, I think that's what puts season 3 over the top as my favorite, because that's just like hitting me where I live with Daniel and Chosen and Daniel and Kumiko, and just going back there, because I think that movie is so underappreciated. The Karate Kid 3 is underappreciated because of Terry Silver, but I think that movie is underappreciated, and it has a lot to do with a lot more people than just, one guy. I feel like I wanted more of Miyagi's world, where I feel like a lot of people say, no, I want Daniel-san. But I appreciated that about the Karate Kid 2. But the fact that they were able to bring Miyagi back into the show through those letters with Kumiko reading them, man, that just like hit me where I live. It's like, that's the stuff that I love. And I think for that, just the emotional moments of that. And then you're also doing like leading up to like Terry Silver lore and background story. Like, come on.
I'm so excited, man. I mean, look, this has been awesome just sitting here talking to you about this, because like I said, if there's anyone that I could invite on here and talk about Terry Silver and just our fandom of Terry and just the Karate Kid franchise in general, I have some friends that like the show. Some folks just kind of dropped off after season 1. I've been enjoying it. I'm really looking forward to season 4, and I feel like it's probably going to be the best one yet, because it's building up to the stakes are higher. Let's bring in even more people. I'm just so curious to see where this is going to go. And I'm really excited to see if it gets really serious. Like, what does it mean for Johnny too? Like, Johnny didn't really know Terry Silver, or at least that we're aware of. So what does it mean for him? And is it something that, like, I think they were alluding to it, is Johnny going to team up with Daniel here? It's just, there's so much speculation that could be done. I'm just really excited to see where it's going to go.
And there are just so many characters that you can see together on screen for the first time, like Johnny and Terry, Johnny and Mike Barnes. Even if Chosen came over and you see Johnny and like the dynamic there, it's just like endless possibilities. I mean, they brought back Elizabeth Shue for season 3, and like that was like amazing. And
I didn't expect that.
So great for the season, but it's like we've seen these characters together before. Where I'm really like interested in is characters that have no knowledge that the other one exists and how they still exist within this world. I think to me, it just makes the world feel like there's so many possibilities. I don't like when people try to make the world smaller by saying, oh, Terry's actually Miguel's dad or Tori's dad or things like that. I hope they
don't do that.
And I don't think they will. I think they're smarter than that. I really feel that they're smarter than that. And I feel the same way, but like, I love the fact that, and there's still a whole other movie. There's a 4th movie out there that a lot of people don't even think is canon, but they've said it's canon, the next Karate Kid. And Hilary Swank could show up, in a future season. Like that whole thing. There's so many possibilities. I think that's the one thing, just to wrap up just my feelings about the show, is that I feel very rewarded for having loved these movies for decades.
Yeah,
that's just
paying off.
It's not that I needed a reward for it, but as a fan, I just feel like I've never felt that like reward, that rewarding feeling coming from watching something. I've never felt it like I felt it watching, especially season 3. And I said it to my wife. I'm like, I really feel like gratified as a fan of these movies, to the point where like it made these movies even better in my eyes, what they have done with this series. So that's just kind of my feeling as a whole. Like, I'm so glad this series exists. Like, and now that we get Terry Silver, it's just like the icing on the icing on a very evil, very toxic cake.
Man, I can hear the laugh in my head right now, the maniacal laugh. So, hey, I just want to say thanks for coming on the show, Chris. I mean, like I said, with this, there's not a lot of Terry Silver enthusiasts that I know personally, and you're definitely one of them. But I had fun talking to you about this, and hopefully, the listeners, if people have seen this show and if they've made it this far into the episode, I'm hoping that people got a kick out of this one, because it's hard to do an episode, I guess, on like a TV series on a movie podcast, but I felt like it was something that needed to be done because it ties into some of the other episodes that we've done, and it just fits in line with maybe the theme and what we kind of do on the show. But thanks again for coming on, and I'm super curious. If other people have watched Cobra Kai, what do you all think? Send us an email, thelastrowpodcast@gmail.com. Go to the website. There's a contact form, thelastrowpodcast.com. Tweet at us at thelastropod, facebook.com/thelastropod, Instagram. Send us a message. I'm curious, what do you think is going to happen with Terry Silver? Are you excited? Am I alone in this? Are me and Chris alone here? We're sitting here. I know Badway's excited. He's just not here right now, but he's definitely excited. I'm just so curious what everyone thinks. And I mentioned in the beginning, we'll be back next week. We're off this week from a normal episode. You're getting the bonus of Cobra Kai, but next week we'll be back on Thursday, June 24th, and I'll just reveal the movie right now. We're going to do Summer Catch. Badway just got back from Cape Cod, so we'll see what he has to say about the world of the Chatham A's and Freddie Prinze Jr.'s triumphant return to our show. But we'll be back next Thursday with a new episode on Summer Catch. But Chris, before we get out of here, anything else you would leave the fans with or the listeners?
I just want to say thank you again. This was an absolute blast. It's not very often that you get to appear on one of your favorite podcasts, so this is an absolute thrill. It's been great talking to you even before we recorded, and I would just be absolutely thrilled to talk about Cobra Kai anytime you want, even if we don't record it. It would be a real treat. So thank you again for having me on.
Anytime, man. And on that note, we'll see you guys next week, Thursday, June 24th. See ya.
See ya.